It's not just radio, it's Rockland World Radio. RocklandWorldRadio.com.
On the edge to a new time. In a world that is built on ideas, but owned by the few. There comes a time when you need to fight for your freedom. Take the old and create the new. Go back to the future and start with it now.
Hello, and welcome to another edition of Media Mashup. I'm your host, Alex, the greatest radio show host ever sold, and I'm here with Kit Lucas. How are you today?
I'm all right.
Yeah?
No, I'm actually okay. I had a cough before, but I'm okay now.
That's I'm happy that you're okay.
Thank you.
Because if you weren't okay, we wouldn't be able to have this lovely talk
Well,
today.
you could talk just by yourself.
That's true. That's true.
What are we going to talk about?
We're going to talk about you, actually. We're going to talk about what you have accomplished in the years that you've been in the media industry, correct?
Yes.
And we're going to talk about your recent film that you made,
Okay.
which is you in it, pretty much. We're going to,
Entirely,
entirely. Then we're going to talk about your play that's coming up.
Right.
And, so let's get started.
Okay, before we start, before we get on to the really good stuff that I've done in my life, and what's happening next Sunday, I want to tell you about the novel I'm writing, because I think your listeners might want to call some of their friends and tell them to listen to this, because it's a juicy story. I've written 4 novels, and none has gotten published. I have 6 published books, but I've never had a novel published. And so I decided I had to do something a little commercial. So the other day I started writing this novel, which takes place in a town in Germany, Stuttgart. And the woman who is the mother of this family lost her husband. Well, he divorced her because he didn't like her, and started a brothel. And the son, by the time he got to be 10, 11 years old, realized that some strange things were going on in the house. So he climbed up to a window that was in his room that was painted over on both sides, and he scratched off some of the paint, and he was able to look into one of the rooms that was used by his mother for these women of the street and their lovers, paid lovers. And he had a sister, too. And by the time she got to be 5 or 6, she said, "Wilhelm, what's going on in there? What are they doing?" He said, "You don't want to know." But eventually he got her up on this shelf, and when she was 8 or 9 years old, she was already looking in there, too. By the time she was 14, she got a great idea that she would blackmail the men who came in. So there was the 14-year-old and the 20-year-old, or 14 and 18-year-old, and they blackmailed all the men who were coming in. And, of course, the mother didn't even know they knew there was a brothel there.
Right.
So I am looking for what happens to this woman and her brother when they grow up. And so if any of your listeners want to talk to others about it and tell them that short synopsis of the story, I would love it. And then they can write or text you and tell you where to go from there. Now, that's the end of that. What do you want to talk about?
That would be awesome. All right, so I heard from a birdie, or I read through the internet,
Yes.
that you, a nice birdie sound, I heard that you pretty much produced and helped create PBS. Is that correct?
Oh, that's a little strong. But I did start at Channel 13 in New York in 1963, which was the first year of the station. And I was there for 9 years, moving up to be director of programming.
Mm-hmm.
But PBS, when we started, there was no PBS.
Right.
There was just a local station.
Yeah.
There were 350, 270, something like that, local stations. And eventually, the government came in and established the Corporation for Public Broadcasting and PBS, and we became part of that network. So I did a little on the local scene. Some of our programs, this was the 60s and 70s, were quite radical, and we didn't all go around smoking marijuana, but there was a lot of left-wing stuff going on. And it was a pretty good station until it got merged with the network. And now, as far as I'm concerned, public television is a drag and should be abolished.
All right.
Okay, you heard it here first.
Now, how do you feel about moving into the digital world now, since
I don't know how to use the internet to achieve what I want to achieve. I think if I could do it, I would do a series of 7-minute vignettes. I write plays. I've had them produced. I act. I make films. But I don't know how to get, I get them up on Vimeo, and I can tell people where to see them.
Right.
But I don't know how to get them to go viral. I don't know how to get money out of them. And so for me, the digital age at the moment is a way of stealing material and getting it free,
right.
And I don't get any benefit out of it.
Right.
So that's how I feel about the digital age. I can't read the newspaper on my computer.
No?
No. First of all, it's not a newspaper. It's a series of headlines. So I get the New York Times every day, and I sit down and read it. I do the crossword puzzle. And I can read a whole page. It's, they're big, these pages on the internet.
Hear that, folks? You could actually read on paper.
You
don't need the internet for that.
Yeah. So I can't do that stuff.
Right.
And as you might guess, my use of Twitter and Facebook and them things is minimal.
Minimal. Right.
I'm waiting. Next question.
Sorry. So when you were to write your stories and your films and your scripts and all that, you obviously couldn't use the internet back then, so you would obviously write.
I would not only write, but when I was working in television, and 9 years at Channel 13 in New York, then 5 years at KQED in San Francisco, then 10 years as a freelancer in New York, the money came first, or an idea was sold, but you didn't start doing anything until you had the money or such a good idea that you knew you could get the financing.
Right.
That is no longer the case. There are thousands of people out there making their own films without any financing.
Right.
And when I got into my 70s and realized that very few people were going to hire me because the idea is that a 70-year-old, what could he do, You need a young guy like Alex here. And so people stopped hiring me, except people who would know me from years ago.
Right.
I happened to have a camera in the basement and some lighting equipment, and I bought myself an Adobe Premiere Pro. Not that it's the best, but Richard uses it, so I had to buy one.
Yeah.
Taught myself how to edit and started making my own films. No one paid me. I made them as cheap as I could. I did camera work, lighting, directing, audio, and editing. And I was able to get one of them called The Choreographer on Channel 13 and a couple of other PBS stations. But that's an entirely different world than I was used to, where I would write an idea and someone would say, we like that idea and we're going to give you the money.
Yeah. No, I understand.
And then it'd actually get produced.
Yeah. It's changed.
Yeah.
Now, you were just talking about films and movies, and I remember watching just like a little while ago your autobiography about autobiography is usually about yourself, but can you tell me more about it?
It's called The Antibody, and it's about the life that I had as a child when my mother killed herself when I was 6.5. And my father then got tuberculosis, and then I was sent away to boarding school. I've written about this before. I wrote a book called Silent Grief 25 years ago, which is the first book about what it's like to be left behind by suicide. And it's still in print, and it's sold many, many copies. And then in 2008, I published a book called Blue Jeans, which is about my brother, who was a Pulitzer Prize-winning journalist who killed himself.
Wow.
And there were 4 other people in my family who killed themselves. So the assumption was, I just saw a psychiatrist this morning, she's worried that I'm going to kill myself. And the movie is essentially an attempt to show why, despite bad things that have happened to me, I'm not going to kill myself.
Right.
And why that is because my life is different from the lives of those in my family who killed themselves. And then I also got hit with cancer, lymphoma, in 1992, and it comes back every now and then.
Right.
And prostate cancer about 5-6 years ago, more. And a number of other things. And I figured if the world was going to give me cancer and all these other people were going to take themselves out of the world by suicide, I'd be damned if I would do it.
Yeah. Of course.
And that's really what the film is about. It's about how it's possible, under the good circumstances, not to kill yourself, no matter what happens to you.
Now, because of all these drastic events happen, I don't know if this really has to do with anything, but does your belief in God or faith really have diminished, or?
I never had any belief in God. I never believed in God. I have no faith. I'm Jewish by birth, but I didn't ever go to synagogue as a kid.
Right.
No, I tell you, Alex, for me, this is luck.
Mm-hmm.
This is not a diminishment or an increase in my belief in somebody looking out for me.
Right.
The luck really has to do with the fact that I had some better genes maybe than my brother and my father and my mother and my aunt and my grandmother and my uncle. I had a few genes that were a little better than that.
Right.
And I had a lot of luck. I mean, if I hadn't met the wife I met, and if she hadn't fallen in love with me, I think I would have been in much worse shape. Now, was that because I was such a handsome kid, or was that because I was sexy?
Well, you're a handsome guy now, aren't you?
I can't see myself. Yeah,
I think
it's
so,
not bad.
Yeah,
It's not
not
bad.
bad looking. Got the whole beard and mustache.
Oh, yeah, well, the beard and mustache is good. Thank you.
Yeah, no problem.
God, I can pay him to say that, but I didn't, you know.
No, he didn't pay me at all.
No.
Wasn't paid.
What happened is that a friend of mine had a mother who knew this lovely 20-year-old out in L.A. and didn't like the guys she was hooking up with.
Right.
And she knew me and knew how unhappy I was, and she thought the two of us would be perfect together. Now, either we'd be perfectly unhappy together or we'd be perfect together. So we were married for 46 years.
Wow. That's a long time.
Yeah, and that and 2 wonderful children who are now in their 40s was a, is that possible? Yeah, we were married for 46 years. It would have been our 50th anniversary last summer. And that makes suicide a whole different matter.
Right.
You have to think about them.
Yeah.
You know, you have to think, wait a minute, do I want to be like my mother and take myself away from my kids and leave them as unhappy as I was?
Right.
I can't do that.
I was talking to somebody recently, and we were talking about suicide because we were just talking about it. And
Yeah.
we were saying, he was saying how people, I guess, turn to suicide are somewhat selfish because they're only thinking about themselves and not really thinking about how other people would feel if you just got rid of your life. Would you think
Well,
that's true?
certainly the way I wrote the book, Silent Grief. That
Right.
was my attitude back in 1992, and in the years up to writing it. I've changed my mind a little since then.
Yeah.
I've known enough people who have killed themselves, and I've known enough people left behind, and the term for that is survivor, even though that's a little strange, to know that the people who killed themselves weren't capable of thinking about themselves. They were ill to the extent that the pain was enormous.
Right.
So selfishness was a term I used. I used to think of it that way, and I don't anymore. I think it's a matter of what this great man, Edwin Schneiderman, who started the American Association of Suicidology, called a temporary solution, a permanent solution to a temporary problem. Yeah. And there you are. You're in terrible pain. You feel depressed. You have aches and pains, literally. Yeah. No one loves you. Oh, well, for the time being, I'm just going to stop living, and that'll solve the problem.
It's a permanent thing.
It's permanent. You can't turn back. But it's not a selfish thing in the same way that if I simply walked out of my family would be.
True.
If I just walked away from my wife or she walked away from me, leaving the kids behind, that would be very selfish unless there was some really good reason to do that.
Now I have a question about you and your wife. So you're telling me that you've been together for 50 years but married for 46.
No. She died in 48.
Oh, I'm sorry.
So that's all right. So the 40s, I was trying to figure out how my kids could be in their 40s when our marriage lasted 46 years. But then there's that extra 5 years.
Right. Now, how do you stay with someone that long? But it's obviously love.
You're asking me what makes a successful marriage.
Yeah, exactly. Because now it's 50% divorce and
and it was
sad
for most of our lives too. I think there are no secrets, no magic secret about what makes a marriage. And when you're living that marriage, you're not sure that it will last. As a matter of fact, Susan, my wife, told me that during the marriage ceremony, she was 21, I was 26. She kept saying to herself, I'll give it a day, maybe 2 days.
Wow, really?
Yeah. Not because she suddenly decided she didn't like me or love me, but because she knew that the world is a strange place and you can't count on anything.
Yeah, of course.
Compromise certainly is necessary. It's not something you decide to do. It's something you do because you don't want to fight. You really don't want to fight.
Right.
So you're going to make compromises, whether it's something you wanted to do or not, you're going to do it. Number 2, luck again. Yeah. Number 3, giving each other as much opportunity as possible to do what he or she wants to. My wife apparently told some painter friends of hers, and she was a novelist, a playwright, a psychotherapist, and in the last 6-7 years, an artist. She told someone that Kit, me, always gave her the chance to do anything she wanted to do, and always believed in her. And she always supported me. When I had cancer the first time and wrote a book about it, and my agent didn't think it was publishable, and neither did publishers, Susan said to me, well, I don't know that book. Read me some of it. So I read her some, and she said, oh, that's a play, not a book.
Right.
And I said, I've never written a play. She said, well, now's the time to do it. You can learn.
Right.
So I did, and I performed a one-man play up in Garrison, New York. And that's the movie I've made from that play.
Right.
So giving each other the encouragement to do what each is capable of, compromising, not having too thin a skin, and great good luck. Luck.
Hear that, folks? Luck and having good skin. Something like that.
Thin skin. Not having too thin a skin. Having a thick skin. Yes, right.
Now, you were mentioning your plays.
Yes, you like the fact that I got that in there.
Yeah, I was thinking about it as you were saying it. I was just like, this guy's good.
Yeah, no.
Now, tell me about your plays.
All right. The play I did in Garrison was the first play I'd written, and that was about suicide and cancer.
Right.
And then the guys up there kind of liked it. This is at the Depot Theater in Garrison, which is a lovely little theater. It seats 59. And a friend of mine started having me act in some of his plays, and then he encouraged me to write. So I wrote 3 or 4 plays for up there. And they're short. They're one act. One is very short, 5 minutes long, and no one understands it. And I think that's terrific. I love
Well, tell me what it's about.
Okay. There are 10 chairs in a room.
Yeah.
And there are 3 people there. One of them is asleep. He's a young man. The other 2 are in their 60s. And one is reading the Wall Street Journal. The other is reading the New York Times. No, one is reading a Long Island paper, and the other is reading the New York Times.
Okay.
And some of what they say can be heard by the other guy, and some of what they say out loud is intended for the other guy not to hear.
Right.
And it's pretty clear they don't like each other. They don't think each other looks very good. The dressed up guy looks like a snob. The other guy looks like working class, and this guy doesn't like working class. And eventually they say to each other, how long you been coming here? Oh, I've been coming here 10 years or 4 or 5 years.
Right.
Yeah, they are so slow. They don't need all these chairs. When he says that, the guy who's asleep gets up and picks up some of the chairs and stacks them. Then goes back to sleep.
That's funny.
And the audience by this time is wondering, what's going on here? This is a waiting. The play's called The Waiting Room. What is it? What are we waiting for? Finally, the young man gets called in, and you think, oh, he must have had an earlier appointment. And then one of the other guys gets called in, and he says, wait a minute, I had an appointment before you. What's wrong with them? And the guy who got called in says, you know what, you can go before me. It's okay. And so the guy who's complaining goes in, and the other guy just sits back and continues reading his paper. Now, is it a dentist's office? Is it waiting for psychotherapy?
Right.
Is it waiting for chemotherapy? Or is it death that they're waiting for? And they've been coming every year because they are ill, or because they have wanted to die, or someone is trying to kill them, and they go away each year not knowing when they will be back. Audiences loved it if they liked guessing games, and audiences hated it if there was no firm answer.
Right. That's cool though. I like stories like that where you're not really sure what it is, so you let the audience
make it up.
Make it up, yeah.
Right.
I've seen many movies like that. And
Now,
I love every one.
2 plays that I'm producing next Sunday. All right, folks, get this, please. Sunday, March 17th.
March 17th.
That's a week from yesterday.
Yes.
St. Patrick's Day, New York, the Thalia Theater, which is at Symphony Space. I will be presenting 2 plays written by Anne Connolly. She performs in one of them, and she and I perform in the other, and a 52-minute film called The Antibody, which I saw recently, which is about suicide, survival, and cancer. And the afternoon, which runs from 2:30 to 4, is called Love, Death, and Redemption. And I want all 100 people right now who are listening to Alex to call the box office. It's open now at the Thalia Theater. Or just go down to 94th Street and Broadway next Sunday and buy your ticket at the box office. That's the first commercial I've ever done.
That was very good.
Thank you.
That was probably the best I've ever heard. I hear a lot of commercials too.
Do you? Yeah? You like that one?
I don't.
Okay.
I find the commercials where, like the medicine commercials, where you hear more of the bad things than the good things.
Yes.
I find those really annoying.
Not only annoying, but scary.
Really scary.
Would you really take something that could destroy your kidney?
No, of course not.
Yeah.
So I don't want to take something that'll help me with depression, but then make me want to be suicidal.
No, it's mandated apparently by the lawyers or the FDA, but no, I agree with you.
It's really scary.
Those are bad.
It's really scary.
Yeah.
So now, what advice can you give a future filmmaker or a person in communications or in school and communications?
You've been talking to me, haven't you? You've been listening to what I've been saying.
I have been.
Off mic. Okay.
I have.
I told everyone who came to see me when I was at Channel 13, who was in college, and if they wanted to go into the industry of a sort, not to go into communications school, undergraduate, not to major in film or anything like that. And the reason is, if you look at the best filmmakers, the best documentarians in the world, if you look at, and I'm not talking about television documentaries, I'm talking about mainstream documentaries, or if you look at the best journalists in the world, almost none of them went to specialized schools. They all went to a 4-year college where they could learn politics, history, math, economics, sciences. I majored in psychology, and I minored in math and English literature. And got to read all of Shakespeare, not with the idea of putting him on film, but of learning what the greatest theatrical craftsman did. And I would never hire anyone whose only experience was a communications major, because I wouldn't think they had anything to write about. They might know this is a cardioid microphone. Is it? It might be a cardioid.
Yeah, so.
They might know this is a cardioid, but that's not going to help them know what to say. If you want to go on the technical end of it, don't go to college at all.
Right.
Just get a friend and get you into the union or gets you into the technical side or make your own film. But if you want to do content, then you need to have something to talk about, to write about, to make a film about. And that sounds old-fashioned, but sometimes old-fashioned is better than new-fashioned.
Yeah, I'd say that in some aspects of what I've learned. That's very interesting. All right, well, I think we've run out of time.
I've run out of things to say.
That's okay.
Okay.
All right.
Thank you.
Thank you. This was Kit Lucas, everyone. He is amazing. He's great. You should go visit his. You should go see his plays and a movie. But you got to go to the box office and buy the tickets, or call the box office for tickets. Is that correct?
That's correct.
All right. Well, thank you, Media Mashuppers. I will be back next week with a whole new episode featuring myself and myself only. All right. Have a good day.
With the thing.
It's
thing that
not
really
just
works.
radio, it's Rockland World Radio. RocklandWorldRadio.com.